to cut me off. If you're like, dude, Dave, like stop talking, like you're just kind of going down a hole. feel free to cut me off.
Hey, no, feel free to ramble. All right, that's we're here to talk to you, and learn about Hollr. Which so for everyone watching, I am joined by Dave Mason, the co-founder of Hollr. I'm not going to talk about what that is because, as I just said, I want him to introduce that and talk to it. Just a quick background. I was introduced to Dave by Ulrich, who co-founder of Learly, who I interviewed several weeks ago, and who was introduced to me by my friend Rohan, who I interviewed several weeks before that. So there's a few degrees of separation, but here we are. Anyway, Dave, thank you for taking the time to talk to me and tell me about Hollr. It's really great to sit down and chat with you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out and kind of connecting. It's always fun to talk about what we're doing and how we got to where we are.
Oh, I'll bet when you've got that passion about it, it's obviously there's never a bad time to talk about it. So, I'm really appreciative that you're doing it here with me. On that note, really just to dive on in, why don't you tell me about Hollr, what you guys do, how you're shaking things up, and what kind of brought you down this path?
Sure. I'll start with the background story because I think that's the most interesting part of the whole thing and how it kind of unfolded. It's all centered around me leaving my job. At the time,
heard this one before.
Yeah, at the time it was sort of it was time for me to kind of take the next step in my career. And so I kind of ventured out and was going to trade shows and conferences and meeting with people. And I was building an augmented reality and virtual reality agency. We were focused on helping brands and institutions bring AR and VR into their marketing channels and efforts, and really kind of being that point of contact to help them get to production companies, try to help them to get to integrators, things like that.
Sure.
And we had created some things. We had built some really cool stuff, and trying to show that to people was really hard. You'd have this person's attention on a trade floor. You'd have their attention in a conference, but you couldn't just show them what you were doing without pulling up YouTube and handing them your phone. And then if the signal wasn't great, it didn't go so well. And, there was always this like awkwardness around the exchange. And parallel to that, another buddy of mine had gotten into this NFC startup. And what they were doing was putting NFC tags on packages as they were leaving the warehouse to be the first point of contact for like a digital unboxing experience.
Did you say NFC tags?
Yeah. So NFC is near field communication, which is the same tech that powers like Apple Pay, Google Pay, all that stuff.
Gotcha.
It's
okay.
Contactless transmissions.
Okay.
And so I was really just taken away by it. Like I knew what NFC was, but I'd never spent that much time in it. And so we were looking at this and I was like, what if I could use this to network with some people? And a buddy of mine and I were kind of going back and forth. And he was like, dude, I just met this guy. He had this NFC business card, but it was just it basically just pulled up his contact card. And I don't really want to save his contact to my phone. Like I just met this person. I don't know who this person is. So we start talking about this. We start going back and forth on it. And eventually we arrive at this conclusion of trying to build this networking tool. So we put it together in like a Wix page. And this was like January of last year. And I start using that to network and it works. People are like, whoa, wait a second. Like, okay, yeah, I go to your YouTube page. I can go to this, email me directly from inside the profile. And it was like building those instant connections with people. And we realized that had more value than what we were doing. So we decided maybe we should start building this thing. So we start building it, doing a little bit more market research, and the pandemic hit, everything kind of like unraveled. And we were just like, you know what? We have a contactless way for people to communicate. Like, let's double down. So we went all in on it and spent the first half of 2020 kind of finishing building it out, doing testing with people and all that stuff. But what we've concluded, what we ended up with is Hollr, which is the easiest way for people to connect instantly. And that's our mantra now. It's we help people instantly connect and put what you want to share in the hands of the people you want to connect with. And then from there, we've added in like some networking tools, things that make it easy to send emails, to do follow-ups, to schedule meetings through something like Calendly. We're putting those things into the platform so that you're now only sharing this one thing, and all of those things that have to happen after the fact can happen from there. It's almost like this hub of all of your sales and marketing efforts in one place.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen I watched, the kind of like demo video kind of commercial you have on your website, and it's like you see a guy taking photographs or whatever with a professional camera, and you're like, maybe I could hire him as a to, I don't know, photograph my wedding, whatever. So do you have a business card
Yeah,
that's like scan my Hollr?
exactly.
And yeah, and like I've seen, of course, scan QR codes or whatever for to see a menu at a bar or a restaurant, and you can do that as well with Hollr, which is great because if you're already connecting with people, it's like, bam, now you've got that all in one place. So it really simplifies away a lot of things.
Yeah. I actually talked to a number of restaurants over the past few months and learned that a lot of restaurant owners, especially owner operators, don't know how to leverage social media. So they have a
Really?
page. Yeah, they have a page. They post stuff occasionally, but they don't really use it. And so I've been trying to tell them, I tell them this QR code that you're using for your menu is
Yeah.
busted. Like it's not functional for what you need to do, and you're missing this huge opportunity. So when I show them Hollr, it's like the light bulb immediately goes off. But what they love the most is not that they can get all these people onto other channels. It's that they only have to print the QR code one time, because the code is, you can update the content on the Hollr profile whenever you want. The QR code stays the same. So if I upload a new menu, I don't have to recreate a new QR code. Like it was, that was easy for them.
I hadn't even thought about that. It didn't even occur to me that those they have to print new QR codes and stick them on the tables every time they make a menu change. Because yeah, it's static. Unlike a QR code, you might scan off of a phone or something like that can change. So yeah, no, that's a huge value add. So I'm sure they got pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and so what we realized is there's actually, when we started Hollr, we went down this path of encoding NFC tags in a specific way. They link to our platform in a specific way. We never really thought, we had a QR code. We had the sort of like custom link that you could use for sharing, much like what you would see with like a link tree. But what we realized is those features are almost becoming more valuable than the physical contact technology. So we're actually going to start promoting those a little bit more in some of our marketing efforts, is showing people and telling people, hey, you can use this QR code. You can use this link in your Zoom chats. And really, that's the purpose of it. We're not trying to compete with Linktree. We're not trying to be that. We are a networking tool. And what I see happening a lot is people missing opportunities to do that, not just with businesses, but with people. And put a Zoom background up with your QR code the next time you go to a virtual conference, and you would be shocked at how many times people scan it and go and interact. Every time I've used that thing, I end up with 3 or 4 new, networking things on LinkedIn. Somebody has sent me an email. Like it's a functional way to network and connect with people.
So you could be like presenting at a conference, like you say, like, here's my Hollr. People can and just scan it, and boom, they can see whatever you put into that, your LinkedIn profile, your preferred email address, any social media, really.
Yeah. And, the goal is really just to make getting connected easier in the right places.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's got some pretty astounding applications. Even if it's like whatever, you're at a party, and I don't know, you're making a new friend and you want to connect on social media. People still do that. It's pretty quick tap of the phone, or I don't know, you want to get in touch with a girl you met or something, rather than manually put in the phone number. I don't know. You tap your Hollr and boom, there you go.
You could go that route. We're taking a little bit more the professional, the
Fair enough.
sales folks. One thing that we've noticed, and one thing that we know from being that person for a long time, is that 90% of sales and marketing is just building good relationships with people.
Sure.
And so the easiest way to do that is to meet them where they are. Like we talk about trying to find your customer and meet your customer where they are and stuff like that when we're talking about marketing and sales. But the biggest part of it is like, what if you could hand someone, the 3 or 4 social platforms that you interact on? I'm on Snapchat. I use Instagram. I use LinkedIn. People can message me in those places. People can talk to me. If they have questions, I post content on there and talk to other people on there. So if someone doesn't use Instagram or doesn't use Snapchat, and LinkedIn is the way they connect, but I'm just pushing my Instagram and Snapchat, then I'm missing that person. I'm missing a chance to connect with that person. And so I think there's going to be kind of this shift of facilitating where people interact and where they want to be versus forcing marketing channels on them and trying to push people into a specific place. Because I mean, I don't know about you. Everybody that I know and that I've talked to has more than one like social platform that they use.
I think I heard somewhere people have like on average like a dozen. I mean, maybe they don't. I don't know. Well, maybe not that. That wasn't exactly it, but it was a number higher than I expected. When I think of myself, I think Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. 3. But I've heard from most people it's a lot more than that. My point is, you're right.
Yeah. It's astounding. Like trying to share all that stuff, it's so hard. I mean, it's like if you go to any platform or any channel, like they're constantly pushing their other channels because they're trying to capture people in other places.
Pardon my French, it's a massive fuck. So yeah, anything that streamlines that. I mean, I'm even thinking right now in the moment, like, I've got this podcast. I've now finally bit the bullet and created social media pages specifically for it. And now, rather than try to hawk each one on the others, I can have an easy, central location to put people in touch with all of them.
Yeah, and really put the right person on the right journey. Because the other side, I mean, the side of sales is build better relationships with people. Like people buy from people. People like to talk to people. Like that's your differentiator is you. So you can list all the features in the world, but if somebody doesn't like you, like they're not going to want to work with you. So building those relationships is huge. The marketing side of it is like putting everything in a place where people can get to it easily. We've kind of come up with this saying. It's like, are you familiar with the Tootsie Pop commercials from like the 80s and 90s where it was how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Yeah, with the owl and the kid.
Exactly, yeah. So we've kind of talked about how many clicks does it take to get to your content?
Okay. But that's a serious question people ask themselves all the time.
It's a serious question, yeah. And if you're saying, well, it takes my customer to get to the emails, to then get into this, to get to the white paper that's kind of back over here on our website, think about how you're putting that stuff in front of people. And not everybody is going to be on the same journey. So are you capturing the right people at the right times with the right message and putting the right things in front of them? It's a total conundrum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know there's tons of research done at companies around how many clicks is too many to get, to the right content. Any smart company has their eye on the ball in this. It's, it's easy to think like, oh, an extra 2 clicks, 5 isn't that much different than 3. But these people see data that shows them there can be massive drop off in use or purchase, and then between 3 to 5 clicks, 4 to 6 clicks, whatever it is. So that's an enormous, headache they're trying to solve for people. And it sounds like you are really, angling to add value in that regard.
Yeah. And we've kind of seen already sort of the value that Hollr can add to an individual or even a business, where you're talking about the number of times people will click through something and click to look
Yeah.
at something. It blows my mind. Even our own stuff, right? Our own e-commerce store or whatever else, the drop-offs are heartbreaking, right? I mean, you see
Yeah.
conversion rates are so low, it's painful, but it is what it is. I mean, it's just the data. It's the nature of the internet. But what we've seen on Hollr is sort of this retention, or that click dump. So where someone may click 3 or 4 times, well, since they're only clicking once to get to Hollr, now they're clicking a couple times within your Hollr profile. So they're
Hmm.
clicking to Instagram, they're clicking to your website, and on average, we're seeing 2.4 clicks per interaction on a profile. So, or
Okay.
per profile visit. So where you're just trying to send people to one channel, you could almost be doubling that, if not more than doubling that interaction, just from putting everything in one consolidated place and letting the customer kind of choose the journey that they're comfortable with, that they're ready for.
Right. And kind of bounce around as they see fit. Um, so
Exactly.
I guess, okay. And like, I'm trying to think like for let's say a client that's got, their social media kind of consolidated into Hollr, are there ways, or are you thinking of ways they can, I guess, I'll say customize, for lack of a better way to put it, how they want to present all that so that they can kind of create the journey for the customer they have in mind?
Yeah, and we're working on some of those things, and it's not just customizing like the look. Like everybody
Right.
wants to be able to customize a profile and stuff like that, and we'll
Sure.
get there. I mean, we're still pretty young.
Yeah,
We have
of
some
course.
things that we can do, but it's, we're focused on sort of democratizing this so that anybody can do it. I mean, it doesn't need to be something where you're bringing in a designer to help you design this profile and build out this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody on your team can open up create an account and have it up and running inside of half an hour. And then you're able to share it anywhere.
Okay. Well, while you're democratizing, connectivity between marketing and customers, as well as enhancing the personal relationships needed to drive sales, I hope you do eventually get around to figuring out how to make it quicker for me to grab girls' numbers, because I'm still single and I think that would be great. But and I realize that if it ever such a thing comes, that's a ways off. Maybe I should and instead you guys do social media connectivity and stuff like that. I'll work on making it easier to get people's numbers, girls' numbers. So I'm kind of curious. I want to like pivot really quickly. Obviously, in any, no matter how great an idea is, no matter how great your execution is, there's obviously a lot of learning. There's a lot of challenges and obstacles being thrown up. I'd love to hear you tell me about, what have been some of the most notable challenges you've been facing, and how have you dealt with them?
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges we faced was completely unexpected. And honestly, it was just from a lack of knowledge. And it's one of those things that nobody knew, nobody could have known unless doing the research to understand, why isn't this working the way that we thought it would work? And
Mhm.
it happened when we were about to launch. I mean, we were a week away from launch. And while we were out in the field testing with people, we noticed that things were like running considerably slow. When somebody would tap my Hollr, or we would get them set up, it would take 3 or 4 seconds for a page to load. And we were just like astounded at how long it was taking. There's not a lot of stuff here, right? Like
Yeah, I
it's
mean that's
simple.
like a lot of clicks. People don't like slow loading pages. Something like after two
Yeah.
seconds, 98% of traffic. I don't know if those. Don't quote me on those numbers, but it's a profound drop off after a very short amount of time. So,
I
in any
feel like
event,
that's accurate.
it's
That
probably not
sounds,
too far off. It's
yeah.
probably, if you don't know the numbers, it'll probably astound you. But in any event, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail what you
No.
were saying. Please continue.
It's a great stat to kind of support why we were panicking. I mean, we were trying to test it and show people, and we were in the position of like, we're showing this to people that have never seen it before and it's not working. It's like,
Yeah.
you're just sweating bullets. I mean, you're turning red. You're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? It worked so good on my Wi-Fi, which was, not for many hundreds of megs a second. But I get out into the city where I've got buildings and everything else. It was a completely different story. So what we found out, I won't go into too many details, but what we found out is the database structure we were using is really great once a page is loaded and has to like reload or refresh information. But we needed to be on something that could serve the content faster, because people aren't going to live on the website for very long. We don't need to have this long load to get everything loaded for them to interact with a bunch of stuff. But we had built it on that, really not knowing that that was going to be a pitfall. And so once we had finished, we were like, what is going on? We finally, we did some research. A week before we launched, we ported over everything. We rewrote all the code onto the new database, rebuilt the architecture like in the span of a few days. I mean, it was a slog.
Sounds like it.
Got through it. As soon as we started testing, load times were down to like 0.7 seconds.
Oh, that's great.
It's
basically imperceptible.
Imperceptible at that point. It was the fastest that, I think we could have gotten it. Maybe if we were on a really fast cell network on 5G, we could go faster. But that was one of those things you just can't plan for. But it's so important to the entire product that you just have to bite the bullet and accept it for what it is and make that work. And, we were like, we're going to do these features, and we're going to have all this stuff done, and we're going to do this big marketing thing. And a lot of that's still bootstrapped. But at the end of the day, it was like, no, we need to spend our time and money making sure that this is the best experience it can possibly be for our customers, for the people that are going to use this. Because ultimately, like, their customers are the ones that are using it. And that needs to be a great experience.
No, absolutely. It's got to be more than bells and whistles. Like, it's got to, what good is the, fanciest product in the world with all this cool stuff? I can't actually use it. Did you find like, your customers, those early adopters, were forgiving and then, appreciative of, of the improvements you made?
Yeah, well, my brother was one of the first early adopters, and if he wouldn't forgive me, then I think I'd be in a bad place. But for the most part, yeah, we had a lot of friends and family on the platform, and I will say this: one problem with testing with friends and family is that you're always going to get good feedback. It was only when we started testing with people we didn't know that they were like, yeah, this is kind of weird, or this is a little funky. I don't know how I feel about this. And that's where like real valuable feedback came in. The thing is you have to find customers that are willing to give you that feedback. Because if you're working with people and they like you, but they're not willing to tell you what's wrong, then you can't fix it for them. And so one thing I've learned in this process is that feedback is like like you cannot put a value on feedback from people and customers. So I've actually started doing that more with a lot of the small businesses and startups that I interact with. It's, hey, hate to bother you, but do you mind giving us some feedback? It's like, no problem. I will take 5 minutes. I'll fill out your survey. Like, happy to help you out.
That's great. I had a thought I wanted to add to that, which is, on the other side, and I don't mean you specifically, but like anyone, gathering that feedback, you've got to be honest with yourself and accepting it, don't you? It's not always, people could tell you, your baby's ugly, or this is a piece of shit. And if they tell you that, you have to be like, well, okay, you're right. I hear why exactly. It says if they're being honest, not if they're just being contrarians or just mean, but when they are being honest, you have to accept that and use that to get better. Like, that's the other. I've heard that from a bunch of other people I've interviewed, as well as my own research stuff, like Y Combinator classes and stuff like that. So just thought I'd add that thought as well. What I am also curious about is, how did you get a hold of these people? How did you start cultivating the early adopter consumer base that was willing to, try things out, give you that honest feedback and stick with you, as you reiterated?
When we first got started, it was really tapping into our own network and saying, hey, I've got something for you. Like, I think I would like to, just get it in your hands, have you go through the process. And what was interesting, and I think this could be like the downfall of some like startup founders and stuff, is they're so excited to talk about their product that they
Yeah.
give everything away before somebody really like actually has a chance to use or get into it. So what I learned was like, don't set it up. Just tell them you have something really incredible. You're going to give it to them for free. Let's meet up over a beer, that sort of thing. And then just let them go through the process. And then what happens is you start to get that feedback. You can take the notes, and as long as you're willing to accept the feedback and make some changes, ask for referrals. Say, hey, I'm looking to do this. Do you know anybody else that might be able to use this? Put us in touch. And because that person had a really good experience, went through the process, their problems were listened to, they're sitting down with somebody that is trying to help them. You're providing a lot of value to that person. They're willing to return the value to you tenfold. So, we were able to organically grow to a couple hundred users just by doing that, like talking to people, mailing them out to people, getting on the phone with people, however we could. And then eventually the way that we really scaled up was we started posting just content on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And it was, we just want to show who our customer is using the product. And, we had seen some stuff around NFC on TikTok before. But what we were focused on was that small business owner that's trying to make a sale, or the realtor that's trying to grab that new lead and get that person sort of in communication with them and get that moving. So we showed that. We showed that with a small business owner, a photographer, a realtor, like the types of people that are out there networking, trying to make their living, build a career. And that worked. People responded. And, the TikToks kind of worked on their own. The content on Instagram and LinkedIn worked on its own. And that's where, we had that sort of big initial push of users and didn't have to spend any marketing dollars on that. I mean, it was all just organic TikTok, content, but it was just showing the value in 7 seconds. Like, just give it to people straight.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to kind of touch on in everything you said. I mean, for one thing, I like that you pointed out, you didn't really say anything in advance when you reached out to people, not as to bias them or give them any kind of preconceptions that they might cling to, which is very important for honest feedback. So that was very smart, I thought. Then in addition to that, you did some non-scalable kind of activities, right? Just speaking to people, asking for referrals, which is not going to get you to 1 million users, but it can get you a good core to begin with. And that's important. I've touched on this in numerous other interviews, so I'm kind of a broken record here, but something I learned at Y Combinator is the story of Airbnb, how they started out going and manually taking pictures to spruce up the listings, get the first customers, and allow that to build momentum, which it sounds like what you guys did. Do things that don't scale until you get to a point, that does, and you've got the resources and the know-how to scale. So, and you really, leveraged kind of the principle of reciprocity, because you gave these people value, because you clued them in on something, very early, made them part of like an exclusive club. They wanted to, reciprocate by passing this along, especially because they got the value and they're like, I'd love to share this with my friends.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's a great story. I appreciate you really, breaking that down for me and walking me through that. I guess just personally, I'm curious about, for you as an entrepreneur, what is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
Wow. Nobody's ever asked that before. That's a good question.
Glad you think so.
I've not always done this. So, I mean, I started my career sort of working in the agency world, developing customers, developing projects, working on stuff where we would like really drill down on these finite concepts of X, Y, and Z. And here's why. And here's why it's going to work. And I think that practice just eventually led to understanding how to do that with a business, like knowing who to go talk to, knowing who the ideal customer is, knowing what to spend your time on and what not to spend your time on. But honestly, a lot of that came from just talking to people. And it was just having casual conversations with people and then finding those threads that you could pull at a little bit and start asking the whys. And that's become like, that is one of the things that I absolutely love doing now, is just sitting down, talking to people, asking them why something does or doesn't work. Why is there nothing out there that works for them? And then understand them. In my previous, I still have a small agency that does some very boutique work. And one of the things that we've realized is all of our clients tend to have a very common tech thread, personally, not professionally, but personally. They all have Oculuses. They all love, they all love sci-fi and sort of like tech forward things. And these are personality traits that are in people that are completely unrelated. They don't communicate with one another. They don't even know each other. But there's sort of this common thread with those people. So they have similar ways of thinking. So if you can find those things within like your customers at a larger scale, it's such a great way to then fine tune your marketing messaging, the way that you talk to people. You can drop in Easter eggs to stuff. For us, it's been like our age group, the people that we talk to, they're into The Office, Parks and Rec. Like that's their shtick, right?
Me too.
We have this running joke about Hollr being like, is this the new Wolf from The Office? And so, on our 404 page, we have, Brian on the store on the 404 page. We have Ryan in the Wolf t-shirt and in the GIF when he's just yelling Wolf. And that's all it is. That's the 404 page. But, that's something that no one's going to go look for your 404 page. No, but if you can start to craft the experience around things that people have a common interest in, not just from like a work standpoint, but personally, like that's how you start to build like those really good relationships with people, really good relationships with your customers. And they really start to like they become fans because you are like them. Like you could go get a beer with them, even if you've never met before, but they're buying something from you. Like you could still go sit down and have a conversation with that person.
I know a lot of people who would get a crack out of the wolf joke for sure. I think it's a great touch, and it speaks to something important. Like as you're building a company and a culture, everyone likes to bandy around that corporate jargon, but it sounds like, you guys, there's a real identity forming. You're really personifying your company and what you do for people, and that's a great thing for a company that seeks to foster connectivity, right? It's an important part of connecting with your customer base. And then I see it come through kind of in your passion for this, why this is the road you went down. Because your answer to my question, why you love doing this, is because it allows you to connect with so many people, to, learn about them and help them. So it all kind of comes together in that sort of way, I find that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of happened organically. But I think that my co-founder and I are building the product because it's what we like to do. We like to connect with people, network with people, see what they're up to, talk about what they do. And the whole product just centers around making that as easy as possible.
That's, I'll never get tired of people saying that. Everyone I've spoken to, and I predict everyone else I do speak to, is going to say the same thing. This is what I like to do. If they don't, I'll be worried.
If you're a founder, if you're out there working on something, if you're a founder doing something and you're really unhappy with what you're doing, it's probably time to step away from that, to close that up and move on to the next thing. Because if you're not like just heart and soul passionate about it, it's going to show. Like it comes through in everything else that you do. And part of that too comes from belief in the product. If you don't really believe in it, then that's going to show too. And if you don't believe in it, then why should anybody else?
Absolutely.
That's why we love this so much, is because we see it work. We see it do its thing, and it's exciting. It's just a fun thing to see happen.
Yeah. And that's not to say entrepreneurship doesn't have a lot of difficulties, the kind of stuff that makes you want to tear your hair out. But that passion there, that loving what you do, is such an important part of getting past those moments and, and staying on the road to success. So, it's not like either or. It's, a blend of the difficulty, but then that passion seeing you through it all. So, I guess, I'm also curious, a big thing about entrepreneurship, or at least that I hear, is obviously, it's a grind. It's, it's very challenging, and entrepreneurs tend to struggle with balancing work and life. I mean, you're married. You were telling me before we started talking, that you like to travel and all that stuff. So I guess, how do you balance kind of your outside of entrepreneurship life and interest with everything you're doing here?
No, that's a good question. And I think a lot of people, I think they misconstrue and don't really take time to understand the amount of work it takes to find the balance. And also, I think a lot of times people create, my apologies, they create busy to be busy, and they don't need to be. You can really distill down what you have to get done in a day in like 2 or 3 check boxes. And if you can get through those 3 things, then you're in pretty good shape. Like if you can sleep, if you make time for sleep, make time to wind down, like those things are going to make you perform better during the day. So you have to really sort of find this. I don't think there's such a thing as like work-life balance. I don't think that exists nowadays. I think it's finding that work-life optimization, like what works best for you as a person and the people around you, your family, your friends, whatever that might be. For me personally, I'll share this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
So this is something that I picked up, and this is not a plug. This is I won't say the name of this because I'm not like promoting this, but you're free to talk about it later. This is a journal that I got, and the journal basically gives you, it outlines things for you, right? It's like, these are the things I'm going to get done today. These are the things that are on my checklist today. I don't know what day that was, but those are the things that I have to get done. And if I don't, I can move them to the next day. And if they don't matter after a few days, then they don't matter.
Right.
And sort of prioritizing things. And then the other thing is scheduling that time for family is like so important. It's like, and being consistent with it. It's like, I can go back to work at, 8:30, 9 o'clock and work until midnight. Like that's fine. My wife and I have that understanding, but between like 5:30 and up until that 8:30, 9 o'clock, like that's our time together every day. And the weekends are very similar to that. I have blocks that are, that's my time for me to do whatever I want. And then we have our time together. And those things we both commit to those. That's what we stick with. We have that expectation agreement between one another. So there's no surprise. This is what it is. This is the time you have to do the things you need to do. So you better get them done.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, definitely, organization is key, right? Like staying on top of everything that does need to be done, prioritizing, and not filling empty time with busyness. I think is definitely a very important thing you point out, because it's like, since the narrative is always that entrepreneurs are always working and sleeping under their desks for 4 hours a day. If you're not doing that, you're doing something wrong, and it's almost like it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy to just be on all the time. And the simple fact of the matter is that's not healthy for you, for the business. And what you can really, do the work-life optimization, as you put it, by staying, properly organized, by committing to, spend time on your interest outside of, the job of being an entrepreneur, and properly prioritizing, delegating, and again, staying organized. I think I said that, but I'll reiterate. That's incredibly valuable insight. I appreciate you telling me about that. I really just have one last question, and do you have any advice or perspective you would like to offer, fellow entrepreneurs, either current or aspiring?
Like There's two things. The first one is do research before you start to understand your idea. A lot of times you can really very quickly figure out if an idea is good enough or not to go into a market. Sometimes there are some things that are like someone has like a visionary idea and that might take a little bit more time or validation, but a lot of times, oh, I've got this idea for this thing, or this is a problem I'm seeing. I think I could solve it with. Do a quick Google search and figure out like if there is a market. A lot of people think that just because, oh, there's no market for this yet, it probably means that there's not a market for it, period.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's like people see all these tech companies sort of creating things, but, they weren't necessarily the first there either, right?
I've
Like,
talked to plenty of people about this, even other people I've interviewed. Google was not the first search engine. Facebook was not the first social media.
Yeah.
But the biggest success did not blaze the trail. They followed in the footsteps of those who came before and avoided making their mistakes.
Exactly. So if you have an idea, do some research, figure out if it's viable. If you think it's viable, talk to people. Like before you say you're going to quit your job and you're going to do all this, like spend a little bit of time to understand if there's any chance this thing might survive. The other thing is like be you. Like so many people want to sit behind a desk and like push something out there that just, it's like, oh, we have this pretty website and this pretty logo and all this stuff. And it's just like, people want to talk to people. If a big tech company could feel like a small business, more people would buy from them. I'm convinced of it. And I feel that way anytime I'm shopping around for products or services. If I have that interaction with someone, if I'm able to establish communication with someone early on, and it's a like I feel like I'm talking to someone who's real, and it's this, this guy that started this thing or this little team of 4 people, great. Like let's work together, because I know that little team that is putting themselves out there, that's picking up the phone, is going to be more dedicated to what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to build, and support me than just some service I could buy off the shelf and pay $10 a month for, and service costs an extra chunk, and I got to upgrade to get this other thing. It's like if you treat it like the small business it is, you'll go a lot further, because people are going to be a lot more willing to work with you and talk to you. Don't get a big head about a startup. It's not. It's the same as starting a small business. You start small, and then you figure things out as you go, and then you can grow.
Well said. I mean, it's like you said before, people buy from people, never lose that human touch. That will always be an important part of connecting with your customers and, keeping them believing in what you do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much. It's been a delight speaking with you. I'm really excited. GetHollr.com, right? And that's Hollr, Hollr.
That's right. We like the weird spelling things.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, fewer keystrokes, right? Fewer clicks, fewer keystrokes, make things easier.
One less button click.
There you go. GetHollr.com. Dave, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it, and I'm really stoked about everything you guys go on to do.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Let's stay in touch and keep things going, and look forward to your next episode.
Absolutely. Take care.